Welcome in, everyone. I'm your host, Cassie Soto. Can you believe it? Hockey is officially back, which means it's time to bring in one of our favorite Golden Knights beat writers for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Ben Gotz. There's some other guy named Dave, but we like Ben here today. Ben, the Golden Knights season starts up on Thursday, officially right here in Las Vegas. They will be hosting the Anaheim Ducks. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and start with some big news for this franchise. And that, of course, is that Mark Stone has been named the captain, the first captain of the Golden Knights. I've got a two-parter here for you. Why did it take until the fourth season for the Golden Knights to name their first captain? And two, what do you think about Mark Stone being the guy who will wear that C on his jersey?
Well, in terms of Mark Stone, it's a natural fit, right? I mean, he's a guy that I think everyone pointed to, even as soon as he got here, as a guy with real leadership qualities and a guy that no one would have been surprised if he stepped forward and ultimately was the first guy to get that C on his chest. In terms of why it took so long, it was interesting. General manager Kelly McCrimmon, talked today, and he's like, every year we kind of get together and we decide what our leadership group is going to look like. And, the first 3 years we kind of got together and we're like, you know what, the setup that we kind of started with, which was, the three alternate captains and no one with kind of the big C on their chest, which they started because, it was the Golden Misfits the first year. Everyone was new, so it just didn't really make sense to put all of the leadership on one guy. Well, this year they got together and finally they're like, you know what? We have our guy. It's Mark Stone. And so he's obviously the guy that they went with. I mean, keep in mind, Mark Stone is obviously a guy that Knights fans love watching now, but he was a 6th-round pick. I mean, he really had to fight and scratch and claw his way into the NHL. And the fact that he's become kind of the star player that he is really a testament to his work ethic. And I think that's something that now the Knights can point a lot of their younger players to. I think a lot of things have been building to this day and him wearing that C for a while.
And the hard work has definitely paid off for him. Well, a lot has happened during the offseason. A lot happened during the offseason, Ben. The roster got a pretty big addition, but also lost a marquee player that was with this franchise from day one. Can you give us an update here on some of the big roster moves?
Yeah, so I think the one that you're hinting at right there is the Golden Knights signed Alex Pietrangelo, of course, to a 7-year contract. He was, the big fish basically in all of free agency. Alex Pietrangelo is, probably one of the top 5 two-way defensemen in the NHL. He's really good on offense. He's really strong defensively. And that's why he was basically the St. Louis Blues' #1 defenseman for a number of years before he jumped ship and signed with the Golden Knights. And this is a guy that was the captain in St. Louis for a number of years. He was the one they got to lift the Stanley Cup when they defeated the Boston Bruins in Game 7 of the 2019 Stanley Cup Final. So he has quite a pedigree. As I said, he's going to be a shutdown guy for the Knights blue line. He's going to play the tough minutes along with partner Braden McNabb. He's also really good on offense. He's going to get a lot of power play time for the Golden Knights. And so he's really, really good, which is why they paid all that money to go get him and then kind of moved heaven and earth around the rest of the roster to make it work. Because as you mentioned, they did have to let some guys go to accommodate Pietrangelo and the big salary that they wanted to give to him. And one of those guys was defenseman Nate Schmidt, who was previously Braden McNabb's partner, previously was playing those shutdown minutes with the Knights, and was a guy that really blossomed here in Las Vegas. Schmidt, when he arrived, was kind of a third pair guy from the Washington Capitals. And his speed and his skill stood out enough with the Golden Knights that he ended up becoming, a #1 pairing kind of guy, and a guy that I think is probably considered one of the top 30 or so defensemen in the NHL. And general manager Kelly McCrimmon, when announcing that trade, said, because of all those things when it comes to Nate Schmidt, not to mention his personality, which is just so outgoing and so gregarious that I think, brings a lot of his teammates together. And so we weren't going to move a guy like that unless we got a really, really good piece back. And of course, that piece was Alex Pietrangelo, one of the few guys in the NHL you could say is a definite upgrade, at least on the ice, from Nate Schmidt. Then the other guy the Knights didn't sign, but actually re-signed, and which also led to some of these salary cap machinations, was goaltender Robin Lehner, who of course became the Knights de facto #1 goalie in the postseason. He got the majority of the starts. 16 out of the Knights' 20 playoff games were started by Robin Lehner, and he re-signed on a 5-year, $25 million contract. So he is locked in to the Knights goaltending room, and he and Marc-Andre Fleury will be playing a lot of games for the Knights this season.
So just a few things that happened during the
Just a few
offseason. Well, now that we've done the recap, let's go ahead and look ahead to the season preview. But this season, again, won't be quote unquote normal. There's some new formats and some new rules and guidelines. Can you please take us through some of those new formats, starting with the divisional realignment here?
Yeah, so that's really the biggest thing, is that the divisions have been realigned this year, and teams are only going to play within their division. Now that's done to create a couple of things. One, the NHL needed to realign because it needed an all-Canadian division, because right now, because of COVID, going back and forth between the US and Canadian border is just too logistically challenging right now to kind of accommodate a normal schedule. So all the Canadian teams are just going to be playing each other, and that means all the US-based teams had to kind of realign. So the Knights are in the West, as you mentioned, with some normal division opponents and some new ones as well. So they're going to be playing Anaheim, Arizona, Colorado, Los Angeles, Minnesota, St. Louis, and San Jose. Obviously, those California teams are normally part of the Knights' old Pacific division, but now you're bringing in normally Central teams, Colorado, St. Louis, and Minnesota. And it's a really interesting division because it's very top heavy and very bottom heavy, and there's not necessarily kind of a team in the middle except for maybe Minnesota. Colorado, the Knights, and St. Louis are probably, you could easily say 3 of the top 10 teams in the NHL. St. Louis, obviously, as I mentioned, won the Cup in 2019. Both the Knights and Colorado made it to the second round of the playoffs last year. The Knights obviously went one round further and lost in the Western Conference Final. But those are the only 7 teams the Knights will be playing. They will be playing them 8 times each to make up a 56-game regular season that will be conducted in only 116 days. So it's going to be a lot of action very quickly. The Knights have 8 back-to-backs as part of this schedule. Another unique thing fans are going to have to get used to is that the Knights are going to play each team at least twice in a row. There are no quote-unquote one-and-dones anymore, where the Knights are going to travel, play someone, and then come right back to Las Vegas and play someone else at T-Mobile Arena. They open against the Anaheim Ducks, and they play the Anaheim Ducks both Thursday and Saturday. And next they play the Arizona Coyotes, and they play them twice in a row. And there's even times this season where the Knights are going to play the Colorado Avalanche 4 times in a row. It's going to be unique. It's going to be interesting to see how that affects the games, whether we see some more playoff series type animosity building between these teams because they're just going to see each other all the time. But it's what the NHL had to do to kind of get this season off the ground, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, if there's some bad blood in that first game, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that 4th game of that series for sure, Ben. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here with this last question. What sort of things are you expecting from the Golden Knights this year? What sort of expectations do you think they have for themselves? And let's go ahead and start with that first game, as you said it, versus the Ducks.
Yeah, obviously the first game, the Knights should be heavily favored against the Ducks, a rebuilding team that needs to add a lot more flash to its game, and then kind of taking the broader picture of the whole season. I mean, the Knights expect to be a Stanley Cup contender. That's very obvious from the moves they've made this offseason by the fact that they went all in to add a top shelf blue liner like Alex Pietrangelo. And it's what this organization has basically been saying since that first year when they made it to the final. We believe we're good enough to win a cup. We're going to do whatever it takes to get that cup. And certainly every action they've made this offseason speaks to their belief that this is a team that can indeed challenge for that elusive Stanley Cup.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed any days, any downtime that you had, Ben, because for the next 116 days, we're going to be hitting you up for all this information and all the Golden Knights updates.
That sounds good. I'm ready for it.
Well, once again, he is Ben Gotz. Go ahead and give him a follow on Twitter at Ben S. Gotz. Read his great work at reviewjournal.com for all of your Golden Knights updates. Once again, puck drop is 7 p.m. on Thursday. Again, head on over to reviewjournal.com for everything you need to know up until then. Thanks so much for watching.